Are we ready, guys? Mito? We're starting. Oh, Cheyenne is here.
Oh.
Cheyenne is here.
Oh, that's good.
Can we do that then?
Cheyenne, can you do the event from where you are? Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. Hayya ala salah. Hayya ala salah.
السلام عليكم.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. سبحان الله العلي العظيم نحمده. وسبحان الله العلي العظيم والحمد لله رب العالمين. نحمده ونستعينه ونستهديه ونستنصره ونستجيره، فإنه حق من هدى الله فلا مضل له، ومن يضلله فلا هادي له. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على الحبيب المصطفى النبي الأمين المرسل رحمة للعالمين، محمد خاتم الأنبياء والرسل أجمعين، وعلى آله الأطهار الميامين، وعلى أصحابه المختارين، وعلى من اتبعه بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. اللهم يا علي عظيم، إنا نبتهل إليك وندعوك أن تهدنا فيمن هديت، وأن تعافنا فيمن عافيت، وأن تتولانا فيمن توليت، وأن تقنا وتصرف عنا شر ما قضيت. يا رب تباركت يا ربنا وتعاليت. نستغفرك ربنا من كل ذنب ونتوب إليك، ونؤمن بك ونتوكل عليك، ونشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت. عليك توكلنا وإليك أنبنا، ولله المصير. It is an elementary precept, something so obvious that one feels odd stating it, because it is so obvious. If one is a Muslim then of necessity you understand that you come to this world with an implicit understanding and an implicit agreement with your Maker. You come to this world to abide by the will of your Maker, not to abide by your own will. You have free choice. You are free to reject that implicit agreement. You have free will. You are free to turn away from the very purposeful covenant that anchors your life in meaning and purpose. But if you understand and you are a Muslim, which means that you accept the foundations and the precepts of Islam, you are fully aware that you are bounded to your Maker by this implicit agreement. An agreement that then is made explicit in the Quran. And it is made so explicit that God reminds you of this ahd, this covenant, time and time again, and warns you against taking this covenant for granted. In fact, describing it as يشترون بعهد الله ثمنا قليلا, those who literally put little value or no value or hardly any value on the covenant that bonds them to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But it doesn't take a deep thinker. It doesn't take a theologian or a jurist to understand that the covenant that bounds you to your Lord, it is not intended in any way to benefit your Lord, but it is intended to manifest the glory of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on this earth. And the glory of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on this earth is not manifested by the number of people who are performing pro forma tasks. It is not manifested simply by the number of people either filling mosques at Jum'ah, or the number of people doing Hajj, or the number of people fasting Ramadan. All of these are but steps serving a purpose. The glory of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is manifested through beautifying this earth, by reflecting godliness on this earth. So the covenant that you have with your Lord is to manifest godliness to bring the full meaning of the light of the heavens of the heavens and earth to the fore. You see, if those who have a covenant with their Lord and those who are cognizant of a covenant with their Lord, if those who admit that they have a covenant with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala do not embody the light of divinity, imagine the impact of such a proposition from a demonic perspective. From a divine perspective, those who are loyal to God, those who are loyal to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, are expected to manifest Allah's light. And if they don't, from the opposite perspective, from the demonic perspective, nothing could be a greater failure of divine representation on earth than precisely that. Put simply, bluntly, directly, if those who claim that they are indeed willing, voluntary representatives of the divine on earth, do not bring the values of light to earth, if they do not embody the values of light in the way that they impact our world, the way they impact life on earth, then what representation are they making of the divine? Then indeed, if those who voluntarily say that they represent the covenant with the divine fail to manifest the values of light, and even worse, if upon encountering them, experiencing them, observing them, they manifest the values of darkness, then they are indeed a very poor representation of godliness on earth. And the results are disastrous for Islam, and in truly, as Allah says in Surah Al-Imran, that those who take God's covenant lightly, those who do not value God's covenant properly, those who take God's covenant for granted, لا يكلمهم الله ولا ينظر إليهم, that Allah in the hereafter will not talk to them, will not even look at them, because their failure is a major failure. Being a Muslim is an automatic acceptance of that trust between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And automatically, you have declared yourself a full member in the team of light. You have declared yourself a full member of the team that is supposed to give concrete meaning to Allah is the light of the heavens and earth. It is through you and through your commitment that Allah's light is supposed to shine in our life on this earth. And if it doesn't shine through you, then at a minimum, you have breached your covenant through negligence. At a minimum, you have breached the covenant through negligence, or through ignorance, or through lack of care, lack of deliberation, lack of effort. This is such a critical issue to anchor back again and again Islam to anchor Islam upon its basic premises and essential assumptions. Muslims are not free to pursue the dictates of whatever they call maslahah or whatever they call public interest. They are not free to achieve what is convenient or what is pragmatically practical. They have a sacred bond and a sacred charge. Through them, the light of the divine must manifest. Otherwise, the light of the divine remains a pure abstraction, accessible only to the greatest mystics on the face of earth. Yes, it is possible. Let's imagine that all life on this earth disappears, except for the great mystics. Yes, it is possible for the great mystics, through a long, arduous journey of hard work and self-discipline, to attain a mystical understanding of the divine light. After a journey that lasts many years, and after complete and thorough dedication, and after exercises and practices that last for many years and countless hours, they will have an experience that will allow them to peer through the veils and achieve an understanding of the divine light. The problem, though, is twofold. The journey of the mystics is so personal, is so individual, that they themselves describe their encounter with the divine as a sir, a secret. Because it is so individual, so personal, that it cannot be described, it cannot be explained, it cannot be transmitted to anyone else. It is thoroughly personal and individual. So it is not reproducible. The second issue is that only a very select few of all human beings are even capable of going through the mystical journey to see, to experience the light of the divine directly. The vast majority of human beings experience the divine light not through the direct experience of the mystic, but through the moral example of those who claim that they represent the divine. And if what they manifest is ugliness or darkness, that is how the divine ends up looking through them. And if they manifest, what they manifest is beauty and light, then that is how the divine ends up looking through them. There were several events this last week that gave one long pause as to where we are again and again as Muslims, and the way that we impact this world, and the way that we have allowed ourselves to represent or misrepresent the divine in life. I'm sure most of you have already heard or been following something that a number of people have commented on social media, and that is the disparity between how the world reacted to the millionaires or billionaires, whatever they are, that have gone in a submersible vehicle to go look at the drowned Titanic at a cost of $250,000 each. And unfortunately, that submersible is now believed to be lost, and those on board, I believe, are presumed to be dead. Now, of course, the irony is that at the same time that this submersible became lost at sea, and the whole world spent millions of dollars looking for the lost 5 individuals on the submersible, and at the time that this unfortunate incident got a great deal of attention in the media, the irony, of course, is that at the same time, there is yet another boat full of refugees that sunk in the Mediterranean in Greek coastal waters and killed about 700 people, or presumed to be now 700 dead, or around 700. And already a number of people have pointed to the disparity in treatment and coverage. While the entire world was deeply concerned about the loss of the 5 rich people diving to see the Titanic, the drowning of the 700 people on that raft in Greek waters hardly got any attention. But I want to focus on a particular aspect in this tragedy and this trauma. Most of you know that among the people on the submersible were 2 Pakistanis, billionaire from a family of billionaires, a father and his son that paid together just the ticket, $500,000 to go on the submersible to see the sunken Titanic. Meanwhile, the drowning of the boat that was full of Pakistanis, Egyptians, Libyans, Tunisians. Pakistanis, I think, was the largest group, and then Egyptians was the second largest, and then the remaining people were from Libya and Tunisia. The drowning of that boat has become such a regular event that a very conservative estimate is that since 2014, 25,000 people drowned in the Mediterranean trying to either reach Greek shores, Italian shores, and sometimes Spanish shores. In fact, right days after the death of the 700 people that were trying to reach Greek shores, there was about 40 other asylum seekers who just days after drowned in the Mediterranean, this time close to Spanish shores. In fact, they were en route to Spain when their ship sunk and 40 of them drowned. Pause for a second. The vast majority of those drowning in the Mediterranean, the vast majority, are Muslim. And they come from Muslim countries. And it is not just that countries like Greece or Italy or Spain are willing to spend great amount of resources when it comes to billionaires, but do not care about the drowning of poor people on an overcrowded ship. But the facts of these drownings are gruesome and shocking. Take the boat that drowned with 700 deaths near Greece. The motor of that boat broke down. Greece was tracking the boat, watching it, when its motor broke down. After it broke down, Greek authorities continued watching the boat, did not offer any help, although the boat was stranded in the ocean. And as expected, was the boat without a motor, stuck in the sea, stuck in the high seas. Eventually it capsized. after capsizing, Greek authorities ignored the pleas for help and did not attempt to save anyone to about 3 hours after the boat capsized. Greece said, "We offered the boat help, but the boat refused our help and insisted that it is on its way to Italy." Now, the reason this story is nonsense is because Greece knows very well that these boats are carrying illegal immigrants and that the people who are sailing this boat are not to be trusted with their human cargo. So even if the smugglers, even if it is true that they were offered help and they rejected it, Greece would know that the reason they would turn down help is because the criminals don't want to be caught. And Greece would know that the people on board this boat are in trouble. But there is a pattern and practice that we see from the hardline government in Greece, the hardline government in Italy, the hardline government in Spain, that we see generally from all the European countries when it comes to these drownings in the Mediterranean, is that these governments regularly and habitually lie. They often refuse to help unlawful immigrants stuck in the sea. And they are often deliberate about delivering help in very small measures, in highly slow measures, causing a greater casualty list. In fact, Greece has repeatedly been condemned by human rights organizations for its forcible pushback policies. What these pushback policies are is that they find a boat full of refugees, that they know that these refugees are in dire circumstance on this boat, but what they do then is that they tow the boat back to the high seas, away from Greek territorial waters, or sometimes they even tow it into Turkish territorial waters, and then leave the boat to its fate. And this pushback policy has often resulted in drownings and death, because you tow the boat to the high seas and then you leave it, and quite often what happened is that after abandoning the boat capsizes or drowns, killing people. And Greece has been very cheeky and dishonest about its pushback policies. In fact, there is a report that when that boat capsized, killing 700 people, that in fact there is a report that the Greek authorities were trying to tow this boat outside of Greek territorial waters up to the high seas, and that's when it capsized. Of course, the Greeks are denying this, but as I'm saying, it is well documented and it is well known in this field that Greek authorities, Italian authorities, Spanish authorities regularly lie about their failure to help people. Now, but pause a minute and think. People in Egypt, people in Tunisia, people in Pakistan, people in Libya know fully well that there's a very high chance, after they save a lot of money, buy a ticket to go on one of these smugglers' boat and get on one of these boats, and they know that many of these boats are not seaworthy, and they know that the smugglers, once the smugglers feel that they're going to get into trouble, in other words, that they've been spotted by authorities, that what the smugglers often do is abandon people. They leave them on the ship and take off on small, fast boats, abandoning people to their fate, leaving them to their fate. And yet, these refugees know fully well that there is a very high chance that they're not going to survive the trip, and that they're not going to get to Greek shores or Italian shores or Spanish shores. They're not going to get to Europe. They're not going to get to the promised land, and that they are going to, in fact, die. Despite that realization has not stemmed the flow of refugees from Egypt, from Tunisia, from Pakistan, from Sudan, from Libya. Not at all. People continue to risk their life. Imagine what life is like for these people back in their homes. For them to tell their family, to tell their mother and father, I know there is a very high chance I'm not going to survive, and there is a very high chance I'm going to drown in the sea or be eaten by sharks. But Mom, Dad, I cannot stay in my country any longer, and I must take the risk to try to get to Europe. They know very well that once they get into Europe, there's a very high chance they're going to be exploited by people who are immoral, who exploit refugees for their cheap labor. They know very well what the risks are, what the dangers are, but yet they continue trying, and people continue dying. And we continue living in a world which Europe, the bastion of so-called human rights, or the so-called bastion of human rights, continues to watch people drown in the hundreds every year, but goes out of its way not to save lives, but to keep the dark-skinned, poor bodies of these refugees away from European territories. We don't want you. Stay away. And if you die trying to reach our shores, that's not our problem. That's what Europe has been saying at least since 2014. Why? To put simply, the lives of Muslims in these countries is simply intolerable. Young people coming from Egypt, from Tunisia, from Libya, from Sudan, find that there are no opportunities. There is no life. There are no dreams. There is nothing to be achieved, no jobs, no life, nothing. Their life in their own country is equal to death. And you hear from these refugees all the time, I'm dead anyway. What difference does it make? You hear this from those in Egypt, from Tunisia, from Libya, from Sudan, from Pakistan. I'm dead anyway. What difference does it make? why is their life so horrible? And here we come to the key issue. There has been an upsurge of refugees from Egypt, Tunisia, Libya, Sudan, i.e., in short, after the failure of the democratic project in Muslim countries. The dictator of Egypt has made the life of Egyptians so miserable. The dictator Haftar of Libya has made the lives of Libyans so miserable. Haftar supports another dictator in Sudan who has made the lives of Sudanese so miserable. And the dictator of Libya and the dictator of Egypt and the dictator of Sudan support another dictator, the dictator of Tunisia, who has made the lives of people so miserable. Here's the thing though. All these dictators, including the corrupt politicians of Pakistan and the corrupt rich class of Pakistan that monopolizes the wealth of Pakistan and refuses to share it with the needy, are all tight allies to the West. So the United States and Europe, the bastions of democracy and human rights, are actually the closest allies, bar none, to the dictator of the United Arab Emirates, to the dictators of Sudan, to the dictators of Egypt, to the dictators of Tunisia, to the dictator of Libya. The only exception is the dictator of Syria, who is allied to Russia. And here's the greatest irony. These dictators spend the wealth of their countries. The dictator of Egypt, Tunisia, Sudan, spend the wealth of their countries buying arms from Europe and the United States and buying vanity projects, a big airplane, a huge palace, all types of luxury items. So they're very good for business. And furthermore, the reason that Europe and the United States supports them is that they promise them, we will keep the Islamists out of power. And part of the service that we will perform is that we will oppress our people so that they will not bother you, white people in Europe and in the United States. We will control the flow of refugees from Asia and Africa to your countries. But the irony is that these dictators are so corrupt, so oppressive, so suffocating. They waste the wealth of their countries. They're paying off their cronies and their friends and their allies. They waste the wealth of these countries buying military equipment, buying luxury items for themselves and their friends and their allies and their cronies. They turn their countries into big, huge grave sites. Literally, grave sites for the living. Life becomes unbearable. And that's why people get on boats and risk drowning and death to get to Europe. And Europe knows all of that. And the United States knows all of that. But the buzzwords is, this is better than Islamists coming to power, whatever that means. And we can never risk democracy in these countries. We can never risk rulers who are accountable to their people. Rulers who are accountable to their people so that there is no corruption, there is no gross ill distribution of wealth. We can never risk democracy because Islamists might come to power. So, you have a world in which it is, subhanAllah, Allah sort of rips the band-aid and allows us to look and see and ponder and reflect. Rich Pakistanis spend $500,000 just to dive in the sea and look at a drowned ship. $500,000 that could have helped countless number of people in Pakistan have a future, have a life. But that is what you find in Pakistan, you find in Egypt, you find in Tunisia, you find it, if you, a small elite that controls about 90% of the wealth of the country and a system of government that is so corrupt that that elite is never forced to either share its wealth or circulate its wealth to the benefit of all. In fact, what the elite normally does is that they don't even keep their capital in their native countries. They put their capital in European banks or American banks. So even when there are wealthy Egyptians, wealthy Pakistanis, wealthy whatever, who benefits from their wealth? Again, Europe and the United States, not their native countries. So now, this is a very grim reality. But several things. Allah didn't make this reality. We did. Allah didn't make these two Pakistanis go spend $500,000 to look at the Titanic. We did. Allah didn't make these countries so horrible to live in that they're unlivable. We did. Allah told us, showed us the path. And the covenant of God is to manifest beauty and goodness. And yet, the followers of Islam have allowed their countries to deteriorate to the point of manifesting everything but goodness or beauty. There are tons of Muslims who, instead of looking at their covenant with God and saying, God, none of this is beautiful. None of this reflects the luminous light of divinity. How could it be that Muslims are drowning in the ocean? Dictators are exploiting Muslims, and we sit back here and hardly have a care in the world. How could it be that we Muslims do not reflect light at all because of this grim reality, then the soothsayers, the witches, those so-called imams and mullahs and sheikhs that come to you and say, obey, don't object, don't protest, support the rulers of the United Arab Emirates, who these rulers of the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia are the ones responsible for the dictators in Egypt, in Tunisia, in Libya, in Sudan. They come to you and say, what's wrong with these dictators? What's wrong with befriending them? What's wrong with accepting invitations from them? There's nothing wrong with our Islam, and there's nothing wrong with your Islam when you support this ugliness and this darkness and this demonic energy and force and power. And you have a covenant. If you cannot create the light, do you at least testify for the light? Do you at least say, Allah, هذا منكر لا يرضيك? Allah, this is evil. I recognize it as evil because I know you recognize it as evil. No excuses, no maslaha, no, well, politics requires that we do this and do that. It is morally wrong. My role as a Muslim is not to play politics. It is to testify to the truth. As a sheikh, as an imam, as a mullah, as whatever, my job is not to play politics. It is to testify as to the truth. Tyranny has made the lands of Islam lands of darkness and ugliness. So dark that Muslims flock in the thousands trying to escape the lands of tyranny. The very West that says you are not welcome, stay away from us, at the same breath, in the same breath says, you are not welcome here, we don't want you as Muslims, but you know what? Tyranny is good enough for you. Go back, live in your lands of darkness. Live with your tyrannical rulers. Because your tyrannical rulers pay for our jobs. They buy our arms. They buy our luxury items. They spend the wealth of your country, the wealth of your children. They give that wealth to us. Like they spend $500,000 to support our companies to go look at the Titanic. We make a great living from your misery. And then comes the mullahs of the devil, the shuyukh of shaitan, the imams of the demonic. They come and tell you, oh, just take care of your children. Just take care of your psalm. Just take care of your prayer. Nothing is wrong with that. Similarly, Modi came to the United States. He was invited to speak to both houses of Congress. I don't know how many of you remember this, but Modi, the father of Hindu nationalism, not just the father of Hindu nationalism, but the man who was directly involved in the massacre of 1,000 Muslims, in the well-known genocide in Gujarat, when he was directly involved in encouraging the slaughter of 1,000 Muslims, directly involved in encouraging the mass sexual assaults and rapes. Modi, the father of Hindu nationalism, who has a horrible human rights record, in 2014, because of his involvement in the Muslim genocide, President Bush issued an executive order that Modi cannot be given a visa to enter the United States, because he violated American laws by being directly involved in murder and rape. It was President Obama who rescinded that order. Bush issued an order that Modi is not allowed to enter the United States. Obama rescinded that order. Now, Modi, who has Muslim blood, who is directly involved in this rape of hundreds upon hundreds of Muslim women, at the same time that he came and was welcomed in the United States as a great guest and allowed to speak to the two houses, something that is reserved for our most honored guests. Meanwhile, how many of you remember Quran Parviz? Quran Parviz was a very well-known, highly respected human rights activist who documented the numerous human rights violations committed by Indian forces in Kashmir. Quran Parviz documented extrajudicial killings, torture, murder, rape. Modi's government made Quran Parviz disappear. He's gone. We have not been able to obtain any information about Quran Parviz in years. Modi's government also made Fahad Shah, who used to write for The Nation, disappear. He also made Arfan Mihraj, who used to write for Al Jazeera, disappear. They also made Sharjeel Imam and Omar Khalid and countless others disappear. What is common to all these people? I'll tell you what's common. They're all Muslim. They're all human rights activists who are also Muslim. And Modi's government regularly preys on Muslims, and no one cares. Now, I'll tell you why no one cares. Because Muslim governments went to China and said, we are not troubled by the fact that you're persecuting Muslims. We don't see a genocide in China. Do with the Uyghurs whatever you will. Because Muslim governments abuse their own people, because Muslim governments are tyrannical, because they have turned their own countries into hellholes. And if you don't respect yourself, if you don't honor yourself, if you don't dignify yourself, no one will. You don't dignify yourself, don't expect anyone to dignify you. You don't honor yourself, don't expect anyone to honor you. So again, if you understood your covenant with Allah, you would have no option but to say, I am a Muslim and I deserve honor and I deserve dignity and I deserve my rights. And through me, the light of God will shine unto the world. And the light of God can never mix with tyranny and injustice, and can never mix with the likes of Muhammad bin Zayed and MBS of Saudi Arabia or Sisi of Egypt. These are agents of the demonic, and agents of the demonic can never mix with the light of God. So if you understood your covenant, it would be so clear and so easy. But you have your Imams, and you have your Mullahs, and you have your Shuyukh that you honor and respect, that come and say, forget about all these Muslims who are rotting in prison. Forget, who cares? Forget about Quran Parviz. We don't even know if he used to pray. We don't even know if he fasted Ramadan. Oh, he used to care about what happened to Kashmiris. He used to speak out when Kashmiri women were raped by the Indian police. He used to protest when Kashmiris were killed and disappeared by Indian police. But, did he drink his water in 3 sips, brother? But, he didn't have a beard. But, his wife was not a muhajjaba. You are damned. This is the language of the devil, not the language of light. It begins with us honoring ourselves, respecting ourselves, dignifying ourselves. That's the beginning of the road. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم أسأل الله يستجب لكم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وسبحان الله العلي العظيم والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام أشرف التسليم على محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن اتبعه بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. I don't have time to get into all the atrocities just committed last week by the Israelis against Palestinians. Again, but just in short, 15-year-old girl who dreamt of becoming a nurse, standing outside her house in Jenin with her camera, was shot in the head by an Israeli sniper and was killed. Not armed, not in any way threatening. And that is just one. Israeli settlers were filmed desecrating the Quran, tearing it, urinating on it, spitting at it. Israeli settlers tried to burn a mosque did in fact burn several Palestinian homes, the State Department called for calm and called for Israel to protect Palestinians. No one cares, no consequences. I can understand tyrants not responding. I can understand tyrants who are part of the forces of the demonic on this earth not caring. But how can I understand you not caring? How can I understand the deafening silence of most Muslim imams and mullahs and sheikhs? How can I understand those who still have the energy to waste on whether a Muslim woman's voice is awra or not? When the demonic have extinguished the light of God on this earth, and you sit aside watching, do you really think God's light it is in a woman's hijab? Do you really think God's light is in the nonsense that engages and keeps Muslims busy all the time? Your mosques are desecrated. Your homes are burned. Your families are raped. Your men are imprisoned and disappeared and murdered. Your children are drowning in oceans. And you, speaking of someone who as a Muslim did bring the light of God to earth. Recently, we lost Ibrahim Abdul Mateen. Everything that I've heard or read about Ibrahim Abdul Mateen tells me that he was a beautiful soul. Tells me that he was a man who understood God's covenant. He wrote a marvelous little book called Green Deen about how being a Muslim necessarily means honoring this earth, respecting the rights of this earth, not abusing this earth, not exploiting this earth. The more I read about this man, Abdullah al-Mateen, Ibrahim Abdul Mateen, the more I read about him, the more I realize we truly lost a luminous soul who reflected the light of God in our midst. He was a young man, 47. And it is my belief that when Allah takes the soul of young people like that, it is often a sign of their holiness, their goodness. It is often a sign of how beautiful they are. It is as if Allah longed for their company, and they longed for Allah's company. And so the two lovers meet. May Allah bless the soul of Ibrahim Abdul Mateen. I've never met him, but just from what he's written, just his understanding of what a Muslim is about, just from the way he looked at Allah's creation and understood the living Quran, the living Quran of nature and of creation, just from that makes me respect him. wish that there were thousands like him, and makes me honor him in this khutbah. May Allah bless his soul, and may Allah give strength to his family and support them and give them patience and strength. And may Allah take care of his young children. I know that there is a GoFundMe type of donation, an effort to raise money for the family. So if you're able, please donate to the family of this beautiful soul. Rahmahullah, Allah yarhamu wa yahsin ilayh. Allahumma afu anna, Allahumma arhamna, Allahumma aghfir lana ya Rabbal Alameen. Allahumma tub alayna ya Tawwab ya Rahman ya Rahim. Allah forgive our sins. Allah strengthen our iman. Allah strengthen our resolve to represent your light on this earth, to be agents of the luminous divine, and to fight the darkness of the demonic, and to never, directly or indirectly, give aid to the demonic and the darkness of evil on this earth. Ya Ali Ya Azim, wa aqim as-salah.